This one's going to turn some heads, I imagine. So I have been doing so much striker testing, it's unreal. Since the changes in 16.1, I can confirm I am a strikers fan. I've been running a lot more legendary missions and just been breezing through them, and more often than not I come out on top with most kills and most DPS, or most damage, however you want to look at it, and I'm genuinely enjoying it, which is surprising because I usually hate strikers. For open world content, strikers still isn't that good. It's much more of a mission based set. That's not to say that you can't run it in open world. I have been, I'm sure many of you have been as well. The only reason I would say it's particularly not that good is just because the nature of the open world is quite sporadic in nature. You can get some pretty dense clusters of enemies, which will allow you to keep your striker stacks up and running for you to be able to do maximum DPS. Other times, not so much. And when you're at 0 stacks building to max, if you don't go for the ACS 12 cheese, which I do not because it's a really bloody boring way to play, my personal opinion, I typically try and build up stacks using an AR, and building stacks from 0, you do struggle to kill just your average heroic elite, at least on solo. As soon as you add group play to this, it gets a little bit more messy. Anyway, we are going to be taking a lovely old gander at the strikers meta, and before we get started, I am not saying that these are the absolute best builds or setups in the game, and as some of you can probably read, this is part 1, so I will be doing further testing. I personally have a few more things I wish to test, as well as the fact that this is a pretty hefty and epic community, and some of you come up with some really brilliant ideas. I obviously can't think of everything, so yeah. Anyway, strikers, let's have a little gander at what it's actually doing now, shall we? So, 2P strikers is 15% weapon handling. For me, this is probably the best part of the gear set, which is mental to say. 15% weapon handling is 15% increase in accuracy, stability, and reload. This helps you out no end, simply just because if you're able to hit more shots landing on target means more damage. 15% fire rate. This part for me is exceedingly overrated. That's just my personal opinion. As we've discovered in previous videos, 15% fire rate basically just means it's a 15% increase in DPS. So if you use a non-strikers build and can do 15% more in DPS, that fire rate on strikers means nothing. Typically 15% in DPS is not actually that hard to beat. However, that being said, the 4-piece perk is really hard to beat. Weapon hits increase total weapon damage by 0.65%, stacking up to 100 times. 1 stack is lost per second between 0 and 50 stacks, and 2 stacks are lost per second between 50 and 100 stacks. This is an outstanding multiplier of 65% of multiplicative damage. The difference between strikers before and strikers now is originally the stacks were exponential. They would multiply with themselves as well as other things. So a lot of people would assume strikers originally gave 25% because basic math, 0.05 times 50 was 25. What they didn't take into account is the fact that strikers was exponential. So it was 0.05 to the power of 50, which is essentially 0.05 times 0.05 times 0.05 times 0.05. Once you followed that through to its conclusion was 28.18% or something bizarre. And then if you used the chest and the backpack, you were at 91%. We're at 65 just at base with new strikers. However, the way in which it multiplies is a lot more like obliterate. It won't times with things like vigilance, etc. It will just add to them. Cool. So I'm hoping that clears that up. Right. Now let's move on to the backpack. Spoiler alert, this is the most valuable piece for the Strikers set. Okay, so this risk management increases total weapon damage gain per stack from 0.65% to 1%. This is huge. This is massive. Just the backpack by itself outperforms what Strikers previously was in its entirety. This means Strikers, just using the backpack, goes from a 91% multiplier to a 100% multiplier for no increase in stat gain. You still only need to get 100 stacks. It's massive. It is potentially it's beyond dumb. I can't actually tell you how powerful this backpack is because it is just ridiculous. Then finally we have the chest. Press the advantage. Increases max stacks from Striker's Gamble from 100 to 200. 3 stacks are lost per second between 100 and 200 stacks. Individually, like if you were to make a Striker's set and just use the chest, not the backpack, just the chest, this is a complete trap. You essentially need to double your gains for an extra 30% damage. The maximum that the chest can give you is 130% as a multiplier. That's it. So you need to do 100 more stacks to gain 30% more damage. Or use the backpack, get 100 stacks and get 100% damage. Now, if you are so inclined, the best way in which I have found to use just the chest is to just go pure Unga Bunga with a shotgun, and you will want a backpack, preferably Badger Tough. Weirdly, it seems to actually outperform the setup, but you'll want opportunistic on it. So get a backpack with Badger Tough and opportunistic on it, ACS 12, and you just spam things with a shotgun. Could also use Scorpio as well. That would actually build up your stacks quick enough to be viable. But other than that, the chest is best used in conjunction with the backpack. Trying to utilize the chest without the backpack so far for me has been a huge flop. It's a kind of waste of time. You will hit harder at maximum stacks, however your overall DPS loss, just because of the greater variety and utility that we have on chest talents versus backpack talents, is drastic. Whereas the fact that the overall DPS gain means that the chest alone cannot even compete with just the backpack until you are at a minimum of 154 stacks. And this is not even accounting into varying other things into your build. Just at base, 4P Strikers versus chest will need 154 stacks to even compete with Strikers utilising the backpacks. And it only needs 100 stacks. 100 stacks with the backpack is 100% increase in multiplicative damage, whereas 154 stacks with the chest is 100.1. If you drop down to 153, you go down to 99.45. From there, increasing your total damage if you are able to hit as well as maintain over 154, you can do more damage. The problem is where you're then compromising your chest talent. The overall DPS will actually be a lot less, and this is easy to show. Now, before we get started on this, one thing to note: all testing was done using the Carbine 7, so if you're using a different weapon, you will see different fluctuations in damage. Second point is where I'm flipping around between 4 pieces, backpack and chest, and then chest. Different pieces will be in different areas. I have tried to keep the builds as similar as possible, so if there's a Fenris piece, they all have a Fenris piece. I tried to keep it with Fox's prayers and utilizing the Coyote's mask. If not, I was using either Cheska, Grupo, etc, etc. It did get complicated and is not exactly a 100% fair test. However, that being said, what I have found, starting in the top left, strikers 4 pieces, yes. For the first one, we're using chest and backpack where it says YY. My maximum I was able to hit was 1,430,983. This is with 200 stacks. At 50% of that, so again chest and backpack, at 100 stacks was 957,184. With the backpack 1.2 mil, and then at 50 stacks we're hitting 695,499. Just using the chest was 1,324,784. Again, 200 stacks, but dropping that down to 50% at 100 stacks, we are getting 629,971. So even at 50%, we're able to see a clear divide. Chest and backpack is most powerful, then it's the backpack, then it's the chest. Difference being, we need the either 200 or 100 stacks. For the bottom half, we are calculating the difference between half stacks and full stacks. With chest and backpack, it is 67%. With just the backpack, it is 58%, and then with just the chest, it is 50%. So our overall climb from 0 to 100 stacks using the chest and backpacks is 300% increase in damage, or more accurately, DPS. Using just the backpack, it is a 235.47 increase in DPS, and using just the chest, it is a 199.84% increase in DPS. The overall damage per stack, so the overall damage stack per gain with the chest and backpack is 6,638. With the backpack, it's 10,961. And with just the chest, it's 5,764. I then went on to calculate the average rates of stat gain using the ACS 12, using the chest or backpack, or using just the backpack with an AR. I estimated that with an ACS 12 using chest and backpack, or just chest for 200 stacks, you would need 29 shots. Then adding in our rounds per second at 5.75, we are able to go from a full mag to an empty mag in 5.3 seconds. The total shots then needed, adding in the stack decay from strikers, would be 31, and we can do that in a total of 12.5 seconds using an ACS 12. If we're using the rock and roll, this is dropped down to 7.5 seconds. Same again, using just the backpack with an carbine 7, that's what I'm using to test. It should take 100 rounds. Adding in stat decay, that's 103 rounds. Rounds per second is 15.2. We're able to go from a full mag to an empty mag in 3.3 seconds. Adding in the fire rate, total mag time, as well as the reload, this means we're able to go from 0 stacks to 100 stacks in 10.4 seconds. Theoretically, the AR will beat the ACS 12 in building stat gains if you're doing AR with backpack and ACS 12 with chest. This means backpack with AR more powerful. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.